What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome back to Sooner Surge Double Trouble. Appreciate all that are already on here. Peyton Bullock says it's going to be a good episode tonight. And Peyton, you're right. It is going to be a good episode tonight as we have Bryan Bedford from Recruit Route, CEO from Recruit Route, to talk NIL stuff. He's been around the business for years. I think 25 years in Division I recruiting. Yeah, excited to get after it tonight and talk NIL, Jay.
Yeah, it's going to be good. He should be joining us around 9:30, so excited for that. I mean, other than that, today, man, David Stone came out as the #1 defensive line recruit. So that's huge for Oklahoma. So now they got the #1 defensive line. He passed Williams from there, so that's huge for Sooner fans, obviously.
Yeah, what's up, Jay? What's up, Jonathan? Yeah, always good to have the #1 defensive lineman in the class. As we said earlier when we got on this, we do have a special guest that will be joining us straight up at 9:30. Be with us for a little while talking NIL. So make sure you're on this. If you know anyone else, get them to here by 9:30 because it should be very informative. Sooner fan has a question for Bryan. Will it ever be possible NIL restructure? Hey, Sooner fan, that's one I have for him already, so I'm going to make sure I ask that question because I actually already have that one in my mind to ask. That's a great one. Yeah. Hey, Sooner legend, how you doing? Hope everything's good. I know your channel's continuing to grow. Appreciate you being on here with us. Yeah, other news, Jay, as far as and Sooner fan also wants to know who has the power to do that. Yeah, that would be something to add to that little caveat to add to that. But it's going to be good.
Yeah, appreciate it, Bryan. We did a softball live earlier today. There's going to be more of those coming. That way we can keep it separate from the Double Trouble lives at 9 o'clock. Should have more of that. No,
I did not hear that. Go ahead, Jay.
Jay, he's not associated with OU.
Now he has. Hey, Jay, he has represented
players,
current players that are at OU right now. He was their kind of the representative. They were kind of his clients. So he does know some things about that, and that's one reason we wanted to have him on. So, and Jay, Tommy Harris to David Stone. I agree. Tommy was a bit bigger, I think. I don't know exactly. I was thinking Tommy Harris was closer to 295.
But
David Stone's 285, isn't he?
I think so. But #1 defensive lineman, that's a big thing. That's the thing about it.
Maybe Hunter can look those up as far as
275, Ron said.
David Stone versus Tommy Harris as they entered OU.
Yeah, Chester, I would agree with this. When Tommy Harris came in, it was the best I'd seen at my age. That would have probably been, I would have probably been in my prime there. Probably, I don't know, mid-20s maybe. I don't know when that was. But
that was your prime. Okay.
He was different. Tommy Harris was. I remember. I think it might have been the first or second play he played. He just ripped through an offensive lineman and got in the backfield for a tackle for a loss. I was like, okay, this guy's different.
Look at that right here. Hunter just drops it in because Hunter's the GOAT. Stone was 275 for sports, and Tommy Harris 275 out of high school per 247. So
Stone an inch taller.
Wow. He could very well be the Tommy Harris that OU's been waiting for.
I'm interested.
They haven't had anyone since outside of Gerald McCoy.
I'm interested to see what he does this offseason, as far as off-season workouts, where he ends up going into the fall next season. But I think he's going to be playing quite a bit next year. Do you not agree?
Oh, he's going to get after it, dude. I mean, his work ethic's second to none. What was Tommy going when he graduated, Hunter? That's what Jay wants to know. And Jay, again, Jay is a Jay and Sooner Legends podcast and many others on here are Sooner Surge Unlimited members. We'll drop that in the chat. But again, we have a very special guest coming on in about 10 minutes. So it'll be a good time here tonight. Leroy
Bryan, I did not catch that podcast with Patty. I did not see that she said that. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Wow, look at Gerald McCoy, 305 as a recruit. God, Gerald McCoy was unreal. Who was better, Gerald McCoy or Tommy Harris?
Tommy Harris.
You think so?
I think most people would say Tommy Harris, but
At OU, but not NFL wise.
No, DG. Hey, DG is not the guest. Okay, it's not DG. It's Bryan Bedford, CEO of Recruit Route, big time guy who's been in and out of the NIL and the portal and all that stuff. So we're just going to kind of pick his brain because that's really what we've been doing on this live. It seems like for the last 2 weeks is talk NIL. So you know what we do? We reach out to people because we listen to you, our viewers. I'm just saying. That's the reason. And kudos to Jason. Jason reached out and got this guy for us tonight. So big kudos to Jay. But I want you to know we are listening to our viewers. That's what we're for.
I see a lot of splits. A lot of people think Tommy Harris was better. A lot of people think McCoy was better. I think it's a wash, man. It could go either way.
Probably a wash.
Either way.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. This guy, I cannot. Hunter, maybe you can drop his name in the chat because I can't pronounce it. It's like Ashnick or something. The guy's 6'8", 340. He's a 3-star, I believe, but he's massive. Massive individual.
Tell you another massive guy, Michael Fasuzi.
Yeah.
And
Missouri.
If you're a member, you got a member video from us today. We sent a special member video out to those kind of talking about that recruitment. But, yeah.
Don't remember that. Do you remember the huge offensive lineman in Oklahoma, Stalker McDougal?
Stalker McDougal was unreal. 6'8" at least. He may have been 6'9".
Man, he just hovered over everybody in the huddle, man. Just massive.
I do not remember. I remember what you're talking about, Tyler. I don't remember his name. The defensive lineman.
Yeah, Chester, you're right on this. He was always double, triple team. Yeah, he brought a lot of attention his way. 100%, Chester. I agree with you there. McDougal was a man-child. Yeah. He was.
Jay, do you remember his number?
I thought he would have a longer NFL career, though.
You remember his number? 78. Hey, yeah. NBA, Karl Anthony Towns went for 62 and Joel Embiid 70.
70 points. Let's get to Mez here. Kirby Smart said high school talent has access to training resources on campus and off campus today, which allows them to contribute early at Georgia. Are you okay? I heard, I don't know if it was an OU player or somebody in high school saying they're already going through the playbook. I don't remember where they're from, but is that what you're talking about? They're already looking at the playbook? And I wondered that. And once you're committed, are you allowed, or is that an after you sign deal? You know, how does that work?
I know a lot of schools, you know, you can obviously do strength and conditioning, but you can't start actual playbook workouts right now. Now, hey, I promise you everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it right now.
Oh, yeah.
So, again, it's the same lines as cheating. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah, you can't police it either. Just can't. There's too many things you can't police. Yeah. You can't. There's a lot of things in NCAA football, college athletics right now you can't, especially NCAA, NIL, you can't fix right now until you get a governing body. You got to have a governing body.
Yeah, I mean.
Hunter says he thinks you can study playbook whenever you coaches want, but not 100%.
Maybe it is. I know in high school you can't. So I figured college also had.
Did you say you can? You can't.
You cannot in high school. You can't be going, high school and stuff, running 7-on-7 January.
Hey, Harbaugh. Sounds like Harbaugh's getting another interview with the Chargers. He's probably leaving, so that opens up. Up another probably spot that's going to go to Sharon Moore. They're not going to. I doubt they hire anybody else. If they keep Moore, they don't lose as much out of the portal.
Yeah, and Chester, DeMarcus Granger was a really good one. He very highly touted. Very highly touted. But injuries. There's been a lot of good ones, guys. Come
Jeremy Wilson guest.
That's one I forgot for sure. Sooner Legend always has a way of pulling out some name that I've forgotten about. I promise you.
Yeah. You can do anything you want, the hub says.
That's not far off, Jay. Hey, you can do anything you want and get rewarded for it. How about that?
Well, in some ways. Yeah, Granger was a 5-star. Granger was really good. I mean,
Did
he
not
didn't
pan
really
out though.
He didn't pan out at OU. His last year, he had a pretty good year, but he didn't pan out at all.
And Jay says capping a team's NIL amount, and we'll ask Bryan this.
I don't know how you can do that, Jeremy.
It's a way of getting around the legal problems of restricting individuals.
If you cap it, okay, but if you cap Georgia, is Houston capped at the same rate? Or are you saying all Division I schools are?
I don't know, Jay.
Yes.
I have no idea. Sooner fan says, did you see this, Jay?
Yeah, I watched it.
Did you see this, Jay? Yeah, made a significant donation, but it's only for offensive linemen.
Yeah, I said I watched it. I don't know if can you not hear me very good? Or?
You were cutting out for a second, so I don't know. Maybe it's my end. I don't know. No news on Hatchet.
Nope, nothing on Hatchet. Haven't heard anything on Hatchet.
No word at all, Jimmy.
I don't know the answer, guys. We'll find out. We'll see, but I don't know where they're going to go.
And you're right, Mez. NFL can't even legally cap it, so how would college be able to, I guess?
I think the big thing is it's not NIL right now in college.
No,
it's pay to play. It's pay to play. It's not NIL.
Exactly.
And if it was NIL, then the guys that are marketing themselves, that's how they're getting paid. But that's not how it's working out right now.
No, absolutely.
Right? I mean, you should get paid from social media, from advertisements. That's name, image, likeness, right? Not come to my school, you get this amount of money.
I mean, that's the way it was set up to be, Jay. Yeah. Whether it's that,
whether it's way, I don't know if it ever will be.
Yeah, whether it's that now, I don't know. And Hunter's right. If it's true NIL, true name, image, likeness, there should be no cap because I should be rewarded for what I've earned. Pay to play on the other end needs a cap. That's a good point.
If you could separate the two, maybe, but I'm not sure how you do that.
Hey, in Sooner Legend, this is the reason, Mike, that we have him coming on, because we all kind of need to be educated on some of this stuff. I think there's a lot to learn in this area.
What's up, Bryan?
And there he is.
Hey guys, how you doing?
How are you?
Good.
Good. You?
Doing great, man.
Good. Hey, man, appreciate you taking time to join us big time tonight. Yeah. We've been talking NIL for the last 3 weeks, I think, on here on our live shows, and just wanted to get you on first off to say what you do in recruiting and what Recruit Route does, but also get your insight on NIL. So just kind of, if you would, first start us off with kind of what you do, Bryan.
Yeah. So I'm a 25-year veteran of kind of the college recruiting, sports tech space. I've worked for a bunch of different teams and tech companies, and started my company, the Bedford Agency, about 7 years ago, clearly because I had no marketing like Sooner Surge in me. So I couldn't think of a good brand to come up with. And that's kind of my holding company, because I really wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I kind of loved recruiting and camps and just all sorts of different things. I thought I might consult. I really wasn't sure what it would be, but it's taken a couple different forms. So along the way, created Recruit Route as kind of a product brand, where we work with individual families, work with between 30 and 50 families a year, kids that are going through the high school to college recruiting process, but also kids that are in the portal, that are trying to go from, school A to school B, and just really mentoring them in 3 major areas: A, college recruiting process; B, academic eligibility, which is a really big piece still to the puzzle. Not a lot of people really talk a lot about that. And then finally, anything around NIL, which candidly is not that big a conversation. It's totally blown out of proportion on the Twitter sphere. So I'm happy to give you a different perspective on that. And then when it comes to NIL, our holding company, the Bedford Agency, we actually are the partner of record with the OSSAA. So I actually wrote the rules in high school NIL in the state of Oklahoma. So you're looking at it like I wrote those, I helped write those rules in the state of Oklahoma. And we also partner with school districts to train the high school coaches on what they can do, what are the implications with some of the rules that are happening in high school NIL, and some of the rules that are coming down from the NCAA that will impact college or high school coaches. And so we have school districts like Broken Arrow and Norman and Moore and Piedmont and Bartlesville and just to name a few that we work with to train their coaches and athletic administration as they put policy in place, because there's quite a bit of things going on there. So you guys be nice to me tonight. I'm here to help you and maybe give you a little bit of guidance on what's happening and try to answer whatever questions you guys got tonight.
Thanks, Bryan. Hey, first question is, maybe you mentioned NIL and maybe how it's blown out of proportion. What's the biggest myth or maybe misnomer about NIL in college athletics?
I think people have the amount of dollars that people think these kids are getting is 10x more than what they really are getting. I think that's way blown out of proportion. A lot of times the numbers that you're hearing, those are total aggregate contract value over a term, right? Multiple years, not 1 year at a time. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that the true numbers that you're seeing kids get is actually much, much smaller than what is being blown out. You got to remember there are now agents involved and other third parties. And so it's in their favor to try to drive the dollar amount up in public perception. But perception's not always reality, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, is that the numbers are, I don't think they're anywhere close to what you're hearing. It doesn't mean there's not some large numbers. I want to be clear about that. But I think by and large, a lot of the numbers are much larger than what you actually think they are. I'd say that's number one.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know. And also, what culture? We've talked a lot about culture, and if player A is getting 10 times player B, and word gets out, are you seeing? I mean, obviously, human beings are going to be naturally selfish, I think, sometimes, right? That's how we are. But is it creating any kind of culture issue, you think, within programs?
Well, I think I don't know. I'm not sitting in a staff room now, so it's difficult for me to give you that answer. I can give you a point of view, but it'd be difficult for me to answer that because I'm not sitting on a college campus.
Right.
I mean, I think that's what college coaches are the most concerned about right now. I think there's ways to handle that with, as far as if you're transparent and you're upfront about that. And I can give a little perspective on what I've heard and observed with what some programs are doing, as far as, it looks kind of like a pro model where things are kind of rate carded. And that makes a lot of sense. And if kids know that on the front end, then I think there's more of an understanding of that. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that people are watching for right now. And certain programs have a different point of view on how to do the design and build of their program and how they want to foster culture. And doesn't mean one's right or wrong. It just means it's a little different. So.
Yeah. Bryan, what about NIL versus pay to play? Do you think it's truly NIL right now, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, there's absolutely both happening. The college space is pretty messy right now. Okay, I don't think anybody can tell you otherwise. There's a bunch of reasons for that, candidly. If you look at the amount of activity based on the number of deals or number of deliverables, 80% of the activity is actually true name, image, and likeness deals. However, in the college space. However, the flip side of that is 80% of the cash is coming through a collective. So it's polar opposite. You've got like all this activity for a small amount of money. I saw somebody tweet this, Adam Brenneman, I give him props. He made the comment. He's like, just imagine in a few years where we look back on college football today and literally boosters are paying the salaries of, student, basically salaries or pay to play, while athletic directors, presidents, TV executives aren't having to touch that. I mean, just think about that. Think about, if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, you had to pay for Dak Prescott's salary. That's in essence what you're doing in the college space right now as a fan. So it will change. It will absolutely evolve. The collective concept, I think, is an unintended consequence for not thoroughly thinking through name, image, and likeness. We were studying this pretty extensively in 18 and 19, and so I think there's absolutely unintended consequences. So I'm always, it's, to me, when I hear college bloggers and podcasts and media members, no offense to you guys, but just in general, when I hear folks talk about NIL, that's not really what's happening. This is like a guise of pay to play wrapped around a term that's not really, and there's some implications to that I don't think that people, well, there's a number of different implications here. The first is that, it's actually neutering what I think guys can actually go make, because they're taking a very easy check and not truly doing the brand building and all of that long term will have a much more significant benefit. And so I think that there's some guys that are actually short-sighting themselves because they're just depending on the collective. And it's like, hey, they're going to pay me and I don't have to do a lot. So do some social posts, do some autographs, do some of the basic stuff. But if you look at the guys in the NFL that are like super successful from an endorsement or publicity standpoint, like they run it as a business. Actually, the people that actually do true NIL the best are the women, the girls. They do it the best. They think about brand building and they think about how to set up an Etsy shop and they think about things like that. They do it 1,000 times better than the guys do. But the guys get all the discussion unless you're Olivia Dunn or Angela Reese or one of those that that have taken that on. So, anyways, those are just a couple of comments. Hopefully, that touches on it, Jason.
Oh yeah,
that does, and I like what you said there. How the women are doing that because maybe they're not getting, like you said, the pay to play as much, so they're focusing and not getting complacent maybe in that area of building their brand. You also mentioned just then, Bryan, about maybe didn't think some things through. I think was the word you used, and I know the talk's been, at least I've heard it. In the future of NIL, portal, pay to play, whatever you want to say, capping something like a salary cap, or talk about maybe where the future is going, if you think it's ever going to get to that point, or legally, I don't even know if it can. Second of all, is there going to need, as far as college space, need to be a commissioner over all of this outside of just a commissioner of the NCAA? There's just a lot of, I think, and people have had that question. Of course, when Nick Saban retired, people threw that name out. There you go, Nick Saban and Bob Stoops. I think I even said there's two good commissioners. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, let me. I'm going to flip the second question around and ask you guys: who do you think is in charge of college football?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally in charge of it.
NCAA, hopefully right now, but it's really other things, I think.
I mean, I think the fans right now, a lot of times, as
so,
far as donating.
So this is probably the biggest misconception that no, it's none of those. There's actually a clear answer here, and a lot of this comes back to television rights. Oklahoma and Georgia sued the NCAA in 1983 because at that point in time there was like one Sunday night, the old CFP package way back in the day, And there was one game on, and Georgia and Oklahoma sued the NCAA and said, "Hey, that should be our television and our rights and things like that." The NCAA actually has no ownership or governance over college football, major college football. That is actually governed by the conference commissioners plus the athletic director at Notre Dame. They actually govern what is major college football. It's done by committee. The NCAA, all their role is basically a rule book and an operating model, but the actual governance and rules and playoff and everything that go with it, it's actually administered by those. So when you hear Bill Hancock is a name you guys may be familiar with. Bill's in Oklahoma. He's been the executive director of the college football playoff. When you hear Bill go up to Jim Harbaugh or Nick Saban or any of those coaches, Kirby Smart, and hand the championship trophy, he will say, on behalf of the conference commissioners and the college football playoff committee, we award you this trophy, because that's who's responsible for major college football. Now, let me come back to, so do I think there needs to be a commissioner? I mean, no, I don't think so. I may be opposite of that. I also believe in bowl games too. So maybe I'm the old man and think a little differently for a variety of different reasons. I don't know. I think it may happen, but it probably wouldn't be a commissioner, but it may be something in between. As far as you ask a question about a cap, absolutely will not happen. Candidly, there's all sorts of litigation around antitrust now, and so there's so many attorneys that are draining the swamp as it is right now. I think if you look at the reform that Charlie Baker, who as the NCAA commissioner, he's actually put some interesting reform out there that I think has got some merit and got some legs, that really boils down to one fundamental thing that is being worked on primarily right now, which is what every fan, in my opinion, should be watching, which is the NCAA right now is going to Capitol Hill and seeking support. And the biggest thing that they're trying to seek support for is an anti-employee status law. They want an exemption from the federal government. Why do they want that? They want that so that student athletes don't become employees. Okay, when their student athletes become employees, it opens up a whole set of Pandora's box for the colleges. You get into a number of different issues, and you could argue for that, but I understand why the NCAA is trying to get a special exemption. Okay. And that's the piece that, if I'm just an average fan, I actually agree with him. I actually wouldn't want to see a student athlete. Student athlete then would have to be responsible for catastrophic injury insurance. They'd have to be responsible for liability insurance. They'd have to be responsible for all sorts of other issues that I think come up when you. But the biggest one, and the biggest reason why the NCAA is trying to do that, is because then you get into they'll likely, if they became employees, they would unionize, and then they would collectively bargain, and then they would eat into that revenue that the schools are securing today. The proposal that the NCAA has in front of them really has three major things. It allows for some level of NIL share, in some share of NIL revenue. That could be a share of television. It probably wouldn't be what a collective bargained share would be, but it would be a share of revenue, and what they're calling share of NIL revenue. Secondly, is it would lift. There's kind of a cap on educational benefits. You probably don't see that as an average fan, but there are restrictions on cost of attendance and things like that that go into the total cost of what it takes to living expenses and international trips that a student, there's just a number of other kind of restrictions that they have. And then the third is that they would create a kind of an upper tier, probably the top 50 to 70 schools. And those schools would actually have to put money into a educational trust. So I think if you think about it as a common fan, like that actually makes some sense. Because again, then if they did that and there was some level of NIL rev share that could go to them, then you don't have to have these darn collectives. I mean, the collectives are a mess. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I know how many of them run and what's being run. The top ones are, trying to raise $10 to $15 million just to cover salaries. So if you could share revenue off the TV, then your fans don't have to pick up the tab to take care of, this piece when it shouldn't be their responsibility anyways. I mean, you guys are OU fans. You should not have to take care of trying to make sure that, a kid out of the portal or a high school kid is got an NIL deal. That should come through the mechanism of the school or the mechanics of college football or TV, right? Or whatever the entity is. And today it's kind of broken. So I think I'm paying the close attention to the anti-employee status, because to me that has to happen before true reform comes into play in college athletics.
That's good. And hey, Bryan, I was going to ask you a high school question. Before I do, I want to get this viewer's question. State laws as far as it affecting NIL.
At the college level, there are a number of different laws. Many of them are, and we would advise anybody, high school or college, at this point, I would remove as many of those laws as possible. I would take them off the books. That being said, yes, there are some state laws. In Oklahoma, as an example, they have a state law at the college level that does not impact high school NIL. Missouri's is different. I mean, they're all a little different, right? So, yeah, I mean, just like anything else that we have in the United States, we have, local and federal jurisdiction. So same thing applies here. And I think we just, at this point, we should get our legislator out of college sports. That would be my guidance to you. I mean, after they set which I think the federal government they'll have enough pressure to do the anti-employee status. I think after that, you get the federal government out of the middle of this.
Yeah. Hey, Bryan, I want to mention portal for a minute. And I know you deal with a lot of high school and just how the transfer portal has affected high school recruiting and maybe even JUCO. I remember the days where JUCO guys get a lot of JUCO guys that would make big impacts on team. You just don't hear about it as much anymore. I don't know if that's portal related or what, but it just seems like it's not mentioned as much.
Okay. So what's the specific question though?
As far as high school recruiting with the transfer portal, are more guys basically getting left out to dry, you think?
No, I think it's just different. So, I think so. Let's do a little bit of like analysis here. I think if you talk to most major college Division I recruiting directors, they're anticipating that they're going to build their roster with about 25% of kids coming from the portal. 25%. Now that doesn't always mean that that's at the negative of a high school kid, because they're also processing kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're politely saying, "Jason, you're not good enough to play here. You need to leave."
Yeah.
Okay, that there's the again, the unintended consequence of the portal is that coaches now can tell kids to move on, and they are. And so, um, I had a college coach this year on a kid that I worked with, and he said, "We like him, but we need a kid who, like, he can play for us next year. We need a kid who can play for us right now because we're on the gun and we're going to get fired if we don't win, 6 or 7 games." So, but look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma signed 27 high school kids this year.
Mm-hmm.
They also lost 10 or 12 kids in the portal or more. Some of those kids weren't even playing at all. And then you recycle and you bring in 10 or 11 kids in the portal. And, so I think that now the kids who were at the major college level, I don't think it's made a massive impact. I do think it has had a little bit of impact for kind of the tweener guys. I think where you see it more, though, is in kind of group of 5 or FCS recruiting. There, I think you're actually seeing more of an impact. So it's that level in between that you guys probably don't watch a lot of FCS football, but that level is, I think, where you actually see it a little bit more impacted because the majority of kids that go into portal, well, 2 things. Let me start with this. I'll give you a couple statistics. So 14% of the kids that are in the portal right now are preferred walk-ons. I mean, they weren't playing. So they shouldn't have gone there to begin with. They should have taken that Division II offer and gone and played at Emporia State and had a great college career. That's what they should have done. And then they're like, oh, crap, I made a mistake and I want to go play because I'm sick of being a tackling dummy. Okay, so that's a big piece of it. Let me give you another statistic. 40% of the kids that go in the portal never play again.
Wow.
Okay, so they're kids who they've reached, hoping they could play at a place, and then they know that grades or whatever the situation may be. If you don't have production and you go in the portal, like it's very difficult for you to find a new home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless a school coming knows about you from high school or whatnot, or can vouch for you. It's very, very difficult. The vast majority of kids that go into portal, unless you are super, super productive. Okay. And so we're seeing a little bit of that with some of the Alabama stuff right now, but that's it's pretty minor. I mean, when you think about there's 2,500 to 3,000 kids that are in the portal right now, there's very few of them that actually have a lot of production. Okay. And at the major college level, if they do, then they have value and they can go, they've all have agents and they can go shop themselves and all that kind of stuff. There's actually a ton of kids that have no production and they just want to go play.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to go play just like we were when we were kids. I just want to go play. So there's actually more of those kids. The sweet spot is the kids who played at like a group of 5 school and they were all American, or they played at a Division II school and they were an all American. And those kids are like, hey, I proved what I can do. I want to go play somewhere bigger. But I'll give you another one. Those kids right there, the vast majority of those kids who transfer up, most of them have less playing time at the school that they transfer to. So it's a calculated risk. So the portal, for the most part, I tell people, I understand why kids are doing it. There's some kids who absolutely need, the highly visible kids. I understand why they they may need to do it for a variety of reasons. Financially is one of them, but there's lots of other reasons. Sometimes they get homesick. Sometimes it's a girlfriend. Sometimes it's, there's a bunch of different reasons that aren't ever out on the media that people talk about. So, but for the most part, I try to tell people, like, stay away. The portal is not an easy, like getting re-recruited is really difficult unless you just have a ton of production. And if you have a lot of production, and then you can make some stuff happen, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah. And Bryan, last question I have. And first, thanks for processing Jason out. I've tried for a while, so I appreciate you saying he was. I've tried to say it, but he doesn't listen to me. But you mentioned PWO, Brian. It seems to be something that's talked a lot more about than it was, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. Is it because schools have an option? Just kind of talk about the PWO, because the preferred walk-on, because NIL, they're still able to get NIL packages as a PWO. Maybe just explain that to some of our viewers about PWOs.
Yeah, it's so this has been, I mean, the world of preferred walk-on has been a thing for multiple decades. People are just now packaging it up a little bit differently, and part of that has to do with NIL. So I'll ask you guys a question. How many scholarships are you allowed to have in major college football, Division I football now? Do you guys know?
85 with.
Okay. Do you know how many, when fall camp starts in August, do you know how many players you can have on your roster play in fall camp?
I do not know that.
Okay. And
Exactly.
you can have 105 players. Okay. So those 20 players that you add to your roster during fall camp, they could be returning juniors or incoming seniors or incoming freshmen. That group of kids that start fall camp are called preferred walk-ons. And all it's really doing is it's guaranteeing them a roster spot. Okay. Now, when the first day of class, you can actually bring on as many kids as you want onto the roster. So a lot of programs, they may cap it at 105. They may take 110. Oklahoma carries typically, I think, around 115 to 120. Okay. So then you're going to have 20, you're going to have 85 scholarship kids. You're going to have 20 preferred walk-ons. And then you're going to carry at the beginning of school, you might carry another 10 or 15 or whatever the number is that help you, get an extra kicker, an extra punter, an extra receiver, all that kind of stuff, right? Some extra bodies, right, to help you practice. Because by the time you get to November, you're going to need everybody out there that you can that's dinged up. You hear a lot about it around here right now, just, and you guys are an OU podcast last time I checked, just because they're what they've chosen to do there is they've taken a pretty measured approach with NIL in general around how they're looking at managing that from a valuation standpoint. And they're also looking at trying to, get creative with getting a few kids that, might go out of state to take, an offer at, an Arkansas State or, maybe they get an offer to one of the military academies or something like that. And they're a good player. They're just not ready to play there right now. And there's other options. I'm just using those two as an example. And so, you package it up and school's paid for, and, they're not getting a ton of NIL dollars, but they're getting enough to basically cover tuition, room and board, and housing and meals. And if the kid's a diehard OU kid and he's from here and it works good with his family, then they can make that choice if they want to. So that's why you're hearing it a little bit more. They don't do that with every kid, but they do it with quite a few of them. So you're seeing a little bit more of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, thanks again so much. I mean, we need to have you on here again to talk purely high school. I mean, we could go hour or two on high school football because I know I watched your YouTube with the coaches session there, and lots changing in high school football and athletics as well. So maybe we can have you on again and talk about that, because there's a lot, like you said, and you wrote the rule book on that. So so we'll be able to get a lot.
I think the biggest, absolutely. You guys, know how to get a hold of me. So anytime, but I think the biggest thing is that this is a really dynamic, a really, really dynamic area. I think there's a bunch of there's certainly a bunch of things that are happening here that are that are changing, and coaches are trying to make really informed decisions. Team dynamics are a real thing. They're really important. They're also trying to, this is, it's difficult right now in a lot of situations because, um, you, how far do you go in a certain area as far as how you want to design or work with your third party collective when you know that the rules may change. You know that that may be pulled in house. And so how much do you commit to certain things? So like it's difficult. Like all these coaches around the country are hedging, and some are being a little more um, aggressive in certain areas. But that also comes at risk, right? And candidly, right now, as much as fans are like, hey, where's the bag man for, all these sports? The reality is right now, we have not seen a program in the first couple of years of NIL that has been successful with significantly paying players. We do not have any data today. Now that could change, but right now there is no staff that has said going out and throwing ridiculous amounts of money to a college kid or high school kid has guaranteed that we're going to win a conference title or get a playoff appearance. Like, no, that has not happened yet. Now, if or when that happens, then that may change this whole dynamic, but right now it hasn't. So I'll leave you with this because I know you were gonna try to wrap up there, but I will give you a little bit of like insider baseball of what you see typically around the country is that most of these third party collectives have worked with their athletic administration and their coaching staff to build like it's like a pro model where they've built a rate card for every single player based on a variety of metrics: number of years of eligibility, measurables, position they play, any other kind of analytics, track speed, all sorts of things that they, that they weigh, right? There could be other analytics that differ from, one place to the other. And then they know what they perceive to be, a left tackle, a left guard, a center, a defensive back, a nickel corner, a quarterback. They've got a rate card, just like in the NFL, where they have a, if you go to a player personnel department in the NFL, they have dollar amounts per position. Like everyone knows this that works in the NFL. Like a tight end is going to make less than a quarterback. A defensive end is going to make less than a linebacker, right? I mean, like it's known in the world of agents and player personnel people. The college model is basically doing the exact same thing. Okay. Now, sometimes that rate card changes dramatically. So some programs may weight it a little differently. That goes back to the very first question of, okay, well, when you weight it very differently, what does that do to team dynamics? We're going to see, right? Because we've seen some things that have happened here over the last 60 days. I don't have a lot of, intimate knowledge at Oklahoma other than things that I've read and I've probably had a few more conversations than the average person on this topic. But, they're taking a little more of a measured approach from everything that I've gathered. And, you can debate that, but, they have to make a decision. Their jobs are on the line. Yours are not. You get to, scream and yell and cuss from the stands, and it's their livelihood. And so, I would say, as a fan, give a little grace. That's why it's difficult for me to go to a game anymore because I can't stand sitting in the stands and listen to people yell about the offensive coordinator because people have no clue what the information and how they're processing it and things like that. But I'd say that all these people are working in a very, very dynamic space that is changing rapidly, and they're trying to make the best decisions that they can. And they're trying to make the best decisions inside the rules and inside the envelope of the dollars that they have and the budget that they've got to work with. And so that's a never-ending dynamic. But I do think the whole collective thing will ultimately change. I think that will definitely change over the next few years. And so, do you devote a lot of that when you know it's going to change? And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you have the perennial top athletic director in the country. Like, you don't think he didn't know that they were going to go to a 12-team playoff before they moved to the SEC? Of course he did. So I mean, they know what's coming. They have a pretty good idea of what legislation is going to look like, and so faith here, guys. It'll all work itself out. And but I do think that changes, and then I think we go back to what NIL was really intended to be, and that I think is a really good opportunity for a lot of kids. And then I think you'll see the governance model and kind of a new operating model look differently in the top end of college football. And good or bad, when that happens, there'll be some schools like we saw this summer get left behind. That will happen as well. I think you'll see more of that happen because ESPN is not they're losing revenue right now with cord cutting, and so at some point their money dries up, and so that is a trickle down. And so you right now it's like a can of biscuits right now, right? It's everybody's popping. And so I think that will actually we'll see some contraction as well, and that'll be a little uncomfortable as well. So all these are dynamics that I think certainly this is not your grandfather's college football. This is changing pretty dramatically, and really the last if you put the portal, you put COVID, roster management, NIL, and then the changing of conferences. The last 3 to 5 years have been the most dynamic in college sports in the history. View that's either really cool or completely chaotic and nuts, and maybe it's a little bit of both.
Well, Bryan, great insight, man. We really appreciate it. Bryan Bedford, CEO, Bedford Agency and Recruit Route. Hunter, if you could drop all his information in the chat for everybody to give him a follow on Twitter and everything. Really appreciate you, Bryan, and all you're doing. Just thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Yeah, happy to help. You guys have me back on. Where are all the other little guys? Where are the rest of my peeps, man? Where are those guys at?
Hunter's running the chat. Hunter's running the chat behind the scenes.
Okay.
And then Jackson was working tonight. So that's kind of where they're at. But yeah.
I just remember all my guys, right?
I know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
they're still around.
Okay. I didn't know if you killed them off or something that I didn't know about here.
Just Jeremy killed me off. That'll be the first one.
The biggest thing that I have a problem with is that I need to get some of that Sooner Surge swag. That's good looking stuff you guys are working.
We'll get you
some, bro. We'll hook you up with something.
I mean, I could be an NIL brand ambassador for Sooner Surge, right?
Hey, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. You guys have a great night. Thanks for having me on.
Ryan.
And this is a fun topic, and I know how passionate college football fans are, and I'm one with you, and I love it, and I watch more than I care to probably imagine. So, but happy to talk to you guys and call or text or whatever anytime you guys need anything. Okay.
All right. Thanks,
appreciate it, Bryan. Thanks.
No problem. See you soon.
See you. Hey, Jay, you know what I think was really interesting? There's that was a lot of good stuff there. Thanks, viewers, Sooner Surge viewers, for being on this. We can go a little longer to kind of wrap up and chat with what he said. I'd love to chat with you guys here. Tanya, thanks for that super. Jay, the measured approach, I think, stands out to me.
Yeah, and the rate card and everything.
The rate card and the measured approach are two things that kind of stood out to me tonight.
Yeah, and like you said, all teams are doing it. Maybe some teams weight it differently. I thought it was very interesting that he said the dollar amounts being thrown out are. Well, what did you think about that? Dollar amounts being thrown out there on the Twitter sphere are a lot higher than what they actually are.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then he did say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hunter, or viewers here in the chat, but he did say it seems like every team's goal is 10 to 15 million was the number he threw out there. I thought that was interesting because I heard people today and yesterday saying, Ole Miss is at 19 million or whatever.
You can't always believe what you see on the internet.
Right. But what I'm saying is the other thing was the aggregate is what a lot of people don't talk about, the aggregate.
And Bryan, guys, is big time with Oklahoma high school sports. I mean, he said, as far as the OS AAA, he's big time with it. So knows what he's talking about. And I know I saw somebody, I think it was the Hub, mentioned the TCU helmet. Guys, he was with TCU for years as far as recruiting. Hunter might know exact title. I don't know if recruiting coordinator, but yeah, that's why the helmet was in the background. And guys, I think BB's, from what he said and what I saw some comments there, a lot of people think BB's doing it the right way. Now
it is the right way, Jay. It's the right way. Whether or not it's going to produce winning, we'll see. And yeah, the baseline pay would be interesting. I don't know if he was going to give some of that out. I like Mez. We had a couple of questions about Title IX too that we didn't get to. Of course, we could have gone for 2.5 hours, but Title IX never gets it kind of gets left out, as Mez said. But I think
recruiting director. That's what
recruiting director at TCU. But it is interesting that he talked about no one's won yet this way.
He was, basically, when we've talked about the last few weeks, I know a lot of people throwing Ole Miss out there with what they're doing.
Did we lose Jay?
Never really. I buffered there for a minute, but never really. Yeah. Nobody's won that way yet as far as a conference or natty.
Yeah, and you're right, Chief T-Bird. That's exactly the difference. But he did mention about also how the women do the NIL more because the pay to play is not as much offered for the women. So they're focusing a lot more on the name, image, likeness, which is what NIL was intended to be in the first place.
Correct.
Actually, Monty, he didn't say, if you want to say support your Sooners and how they're handling it, yes, that's what he said. But he also hinted at, it shouldn't be fans' jobs to be paying for these salaries.
I agree with that. I agree with that. That's what the collectives are, though. A lot of people you're begging fans to pay for it. I mean, how many coaches shows this last year did the head coach, you saw Mark Stoops basically saying, y'all need to donate more if you want to beat Georgia, right? And then I think maybe Swin, I don't know who else. I heard a couple of coaches this year on Coach's Show basically say, y'all need to donate more as fans. Quit whining about it. But as a fan, is it the fan's job to pay for the team to have players? I mean, that was a great point he made. That should come from TV revenue and everything else. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and Chad Gamble, thanks for the super. Appreciate it. Kim, I mean, obviously not all schools are paying the same. Even he said that. And it's just some of the schools that have paid more, and I think A&M is one. Ole Miss, we'll see what happens, but they haven't really won the big one yet, I guess you could say. A&M didn't win much with the pay for play, especially the bags that we heard was dropping. Now, obviously, maybe it sounds like it wasn't that much, and you've actually heard A&M players say that too.
Yeah, Mark said the same thing. Made sense that fans shouldn't be fitting that the bill. TV money should pay NIL. Hunter says would like to see the collectives go away. Jonathan says it made me feel better.
I agree, Jonathan. Look, here's what it made me feel better about, Jay. There's a lot of people who say OU just doesn't have the money. And then there's the other side where people say OU has the money. They're just not going to spend it on one player. It's kind of across the board. So it does seem like the measured approach is the latter. And that's what OU is going to go with.
It sounds like, basic. We have this amount that we're paying these specific positions based off your performance, based off eligibility, however you want to weight them. And then maybe they're not going to, that's their limit. Maybe that they're saying, hey, that's what we're going to do.
And the rate card was an interesting way of explaining that. I like that. We do have to give Purple Orca an answer for the trivia question because Purple Orca said conference commissioners when Brian asked us that question about who's running the football leagues.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was kind of confused on what he was asking.
I thought it was media. I was going media, but he did Hunter already gave him a point. Nice.
Fred says, do you think we're nervous about Otterton getting in trouble about spending money on players? Otterton.
Hey, I don't know what that is, but Jay, can you also, Hunter, give Mez a point too? Mez also answered the 85 scholarships,
and
20 extra.
I did not know the. I didn't know it was
20. I thought it was 10. I didn't know it was 20 PWO. So give Mez a point because that was great. Jay, you did get the 85 scholarship. Good job.
Well, you had already ran me off. I mean, already been processed out of double trouble.
I do find it interesting, Brian processed you over me. I thought that was very.
You know why?
I thought that was very. He's a smart guy, Jay. It's obvious.
He did that because he knows who I am. He's never heard of you. He knows my name. Sorry, didn't know yours. And you know what? I think that answer about portal and how it affect high school, as far as it doesn't really. When he explained it, it made more sense. Like, yeah, it doesn't really, because you're getting rid of college players in the portal and you're getting more portal guys. It's not really affecting your high school recruiting. At least at big schools.
Is Fred talking about Oregon getting in trouble? Do you think we're nervous about Oregon, or I'm trying to figure out others getting in trouble about spending money for players?
I don't know, Fred. You're going to have to rephrase that or change the word Otterton. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Kim Hurst says Bama ran college football with collectives before it was legal. As long as there are egos, there will be collectives.
Hey, go back to Mez had a point I was getting ready to read, and it was potential, quote, revenue sharing. Yeah, and this is what I was going to ask. Mez put this in the chat, but Brian was – I didn't want to interrupt Brian. He was on a different topic. He talked about kind of those laws and the revenue sharing. Title IX requires revenue sharing of college football to all sports in the athletic department. And that is the point. So there is an effect, a domino effect, I guess you could say, of that.
Yeah, and we could have went for hours with him. I mean, there's so much more we left on the table as far as to talk about, but obviously want to be respectful of time and everything as well. We'll have him on again. It's not a problem. We'll have him on again. Florida's getting in trouble for recruiting violations. Yes.
Hey, Mark's got a good idea. Grow Sooner Surge, and we'll pay for the players, guys. That's what Mark says.
Chief T-Bird, let's get to that one. Would you guys rather be a third-round draft pick or a sophomore, junior, all-conference player that can leverage a better NIL deal? I'll say this, Chief T-Bird.
Third-round draft pick.
This is my opinion. I would rather be the sophomore, junior because of this. Your time in the NFL is limited. Make money while you can before you get to the NFL. That's what I would say. As much as you can make in college, do it, because your time in the NFL is limited. That's my belief on it.
Hey, we did thank Tanya, and again, big time thanks to Tanya. Every night, it's unbelievable, Tanya. We really do appreciate it.
We do. And she gives to OU Collective, it sounds like.
Yeah. Sooner Surge, Hunter there. And I didn't see your new chat, Fred. Maybe Hunter can drop it in. But what Hunter said there is true. The way Brian explained the portal impact on recruiting makes a lot more sense after that.
Excellent. Yeah, for those who are wondering why I asked, where's all my other guys at, my young guys? So obviously y'all know Hunter's in the background doing the chat. Jackson is also part of Sooner Surge. He's in the chat usually. He comments. He's on videos if you watch our videos. So they're still with Sooner Surge.
Yeah, and sophomore, junior to leverage. I don't know. NFL career is down to 3. Third-round draft pick, though. I mean, again, what's your dream? I think a lot of players' dreams is NFL, but maybe it's not anymore. Some schools getting in trouble doing this NIL wrong. I'm confused.
Well, so you have the Florida situation with, I think it goes back to Jaden Rashada. Yeah. I think what that goes back to. I mean, as far as another school, I mean, who else is really in trouble? And even if in trouble, I think it's slap on the bit.
And it could be in trouble because they're losing, Jay. That could be they're doing it wrong that way. I don't know exactly. It's pretty hard to get in trouble unless you're tampering with maybe Corporal Orca is saying about Iowa. The tampering during season.
Yeah, no word on Hatcher yet, Ricky. Haven't heard anything.
Unfortunate.
Hunter says, after hearing Brian say the reported numbers are 10 times higher than the actual number, I would take the third-round pick. There's also sponsorship deals for professional athletes. You say that, Hunter, but Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman probably would have been around the 3rd round pick, would they have not have, and they came back. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
it also depends on the player if they love college and all that.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say a special thanks, honestly, to all the Sooner Surge viewers that are on this right now. I know it was unlike our other ones. Didn't have a lot of bantering here with our viewers and a lot of discussion. Appreciate your patience. I hope
you showing up too.
I appreciate you showing up, and I hope you all learned something from this. You can go back and rewatch this video. It'll be on our YouTube channel. Hunter will also drop that Sooner Surge Unlimited membership opportunity in the chat. We've had several more join the Discord, chatted all day today about certain things. So you can join that after you become a member. But we're going to be on here again, same time tomorrow. Actually, it'd be 9:30. OU's got a big one.
Hey, wait, is tomorrow a little later for you?
It is, and it is for me, yeah.
So might be 9:45 tomorrow.
Mark wants me to yell once. I'll tell you what I'm going to yell at before we get off here. If the OU basketball team doesn't show up and beat the Longhorns, and every time they dunk, there should be a horns dropped, the Porter Moser needs to drop the horns before he shakes Rodney Terry's hand. Okay, how about that?
Hey, the whole student section better be doing this the whole game. I want Rodney Terry to see that in his sleep after the game. And Tanya, glad you got your shirt. Hey, there's going to be another chance for everybody to order merchandise. We'll have it, drop it again. But thank you, Tanya, for ordering that. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's get that Sooner Surge name out there. Wear that merchandise loud and proud. Horns down for life. Horns down all night.
I think that's the best way to end it. We're not going to end it with Boomer. We're going to end it with horns down till tomorrow night.